I've been unfortunate enough to be divorced twice. I'm remarried now. I'm on my third marriage, and I know we can touch on even the shame that brings of being divorced a number of times and married a number of times. I just thought if you loved someone hard enough, it will eventually come good. And actually all that was doing was holding on to something that really should never have been held on to. And my grip was tight. I let him off with all kinds of behavior. Yes, of course, I understand that we all come to our partnerships bringing with us a set of luggage that we've built up from all our other relationships. You don't just live, learn, and leave behind. No. Of course not. You bring part of that with you.
Welcome to the Heartbreak to Happiness show with Sara Davison. If you're struggling with a breakup and you feel shocked, angry, betrayed, devastated, or sad and alone, then this podcast is for you. Best-selling author and award-winning host Sara Davison shares how you too can get on with your life to heal, grow, and move from heartbreak to happiness. Here's your host, Sara Davison.
Welcome back to the show. Now, today's podcast is sponsored by the leading family law department of Pennington Manches Cooper, a full-service international law firm with its main base in London. The department provides expertise in all areas of family law and specialises in high-value financial and complex children cases. The lawyers believe in offering an outstanding level of service and support to their clients, many of whom have international connections. To contact the team, please email anna.woolward@penningtonslaw.com and quote Sara Davison. Now, back to the show, and I am super excited today to introduce you to Andrea McLean. Now, many of you will know Andrea as a broadcaster, in fact, one of our nation's most treasured broadcasters, and you'll know her from the telly. But she is also a multiple Sunday Times best-selling author, a personal growth entrepreneur, as well as a media coach. So I am super excited to welcome Andrea McLean to the show. Welcome, Andrea.
Thank you for having me, and I love what you've done with the place.
I know. Spruced it up a bit.
Yeah, it's all good. Anything for you. Happy to be back.
Thank you. I mean, I just am in awe of your career. I think you've done so well. I think everything you touch seems to work. So tell me about this. How did you get into TV? Because I love this story, and I think my listeners will know you as one of our most loved national treasures off the telly. But tell us how you got in, because that's a really interesting story.
Well, the route that most people take in telly is it's something that they've wanted to do since they were little, and they've, followed the paths of other TV stars and emulated what they've done. For me, it was kind of the total opposite, because actually I wanted to be a writer, and I moved to London literally with everything I owned in the back seat of my car, slept on floors to try and become a features writer and journalist. And then I misread a job advert that turned out to be for a weather presenter. And when I realized, I thought, one, that's hilarious. And two, I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll go along and I'll write a piece about what's it like to audition to be a weather presenter. And when I arrived, I think because I wasn't as nervous as everyone else, because this wasn't my big dream. One, I had studied shorthand, so I was able to take lots of notes when they did the briefing. Two, I found it really easy to talk to time with people talking in my ear. For some reason, I just took to that really well. And three, I was able to just relax and be myself, which when you really want something is very, very hard to do. So that was how I initially got into television. I worked for the Weather Channel for 18 months. But in terms of getting into the channel that everyone grew to know and love me for, which was ITV, and I worked for GMTV, the breakfast program at the beginning. I got that job because the editor's secretary asked me to come in for an interview as a bit of a joke, because I apparently looked like the editor's girlfriend.
Oh.
And they had already cast the role as the presenter, and I got the job of training the weather presenter they had hired, because they were a model and they didn't actually know what to do. They just looked really good. And I don't have any ego, so I said yes, I needed the work, and I trained the person who got the job I actually wanted. They didn't work out, and then I was asked to stay. until they found someone more suitable. And I just kept my head down, kept turning up, was nice to everybody, and ended up being there for 11 years.
Wow. Wow.
So I didn't follow a set route. However, what I did do was, you know, when an opportunity presents itself, take it. Even if it seems like it's completely off course, if it's challenging, if it's interesting, if you're intrigued by the whole thing and a little bit scared and excited, give it a go. What's the worst that could happen? You know, you don't get it, but if you don't want it in the first place, what's to lose? Great story with your friends later on. And then actually what I found was the skills that I already had as a journalist and as a writer were very transferable. And what I ended up learning was how to do what I could do off camera, and I learned how to do them on camera. So actually, it all ended up tying in really well.
And you've interviewed some incredibly big names. Tell us who you've spoken to and who's your favourite.
Oh, I've been so lucky in my career. I've interviewed A-list stars. I've interviewed pop stars. I sat on the sofa. I wasn't actually the chief interviewer, but when I was hosting the GMTV, the morning news show at the time, so I was part of the interview. I interviewed Tony Blair. So I've interviewed prime ministers as well.
Wow.
And that was interesting. But for me, my biggest was Oprah Winfrey. I interviewed Oprah Winfrey a few years ago, and that was the interview where I didn't sleep a wink the night before. I was so nervous because she's the epitome of the queen of daytime television.
Yeah.
She is a global star of interviewing. You do not want to mess up interviewing the global star of interviewing. I had managed to get myself an invitation to an event she was at the night before because I wanted to meet her, shake her hand, look in her eyes, and at least build some kind of connection before speaking with her, because it's so much it's so much easier to interview someone when you've had that kind of connection. I couldn't get anyone near her. I mean, she was surrounded all evening. And so I did have to kind of go in cold. But she was amazing. She was professional. She was warm. She was engaging. She knows what's needed from her, and she gives it to everybody. Yeah. I do think, though, however, that Oprah Winfrey thinks that the whole world smells of sweat and fresh paint because everything had been made lickety-split because Oprah was coming and everyone was nervous and slightly sweaty. So I think she's a bit like the Queen. I think she thinks the world smells of fresh paint and sweat. But she was great. She was really engaging and lovely, and I have shaken her hand and been in her presence, and it was amazing.
Where did you interview her?
It was on Loose Women.
Oh, she came on to this. Yeah. She was over in the UK.
She was over in the UK, and we were one of a very, very small select number of interviews that she did. Okay. It was a big deal because not only was it in front of a live studio audience, so obviously you have a few hundred people there, it's live in front of millions of people at home, but also you know that the world's press are watching as well, because every time Oprah is interviewed, the world is watching, you know, to see what she's got to say. So there was a lot of pressure to not only get it right personally for me, for my own ego and everything else, but knowing that globally people would be watching this. So it was a big relief when I kind of breathed out and went home and went, do you know what? Hand on heart, it wasn't the best interview I've ever done, but I didn't fall over. I didn't faint. I remembered my name. You know, all these things that, you know, you still feel starstruck, even if you've done this job for a very long time and you know you're competent, you know you're capable. But sometimes you meet people who make you just really hope that you get it right. And she was one of those
Exactly.
people.
And she's an absolute mega star, and she really knows her stuff as well. And I love listening to all her. I mean, I've listened to pretty much, I think, all her podcasts she's ever done, listened to how she does it and the questions she asks. I think she's phenomenal, but I can imagine that's daunting. It's daunting interviewing you. Is like one of the best interviewers in our country. So God knows how you felt interviewing her. So tell us, I mean, I think you are a shining light of being able to talk about your breakups to people, so it inspires them and they can learn from it. I know a lot of people really resonate because they feel like they know you because you're in our homes, or you were in our homes every day on the telly. So, you know, sharing your story, going through all that, I think is really empowering. And I know a lot of my listeners follow you and know a little bit about your story, but can you share for those people that aren't sure what you've been through, because you've been on a hell of a journey.
I have, and I'm still on the journey. It's life is a roller coaster, or so Ronan Keating sang, and it absolutely is. And I think I think you learn as you get older that actually what you feel is the worst thing that could possibly happen to you is actually a moment for growth and learning. And it if you're going through this pain right now, you will not be feeling this at all. You can't feel it until you get out the other side. So as an old lady who has been through it and come out the other side, but is also still going through my own things, I still have my own bumps in the road happening now. Thankfully, not with divorce. But what I would say is each separation, divorce, breakup situation is unique, but also the same. The pain and heartbreak and the feeling that you are drowning and you cannot even fathom the idea of swimming to dry land, because it's something that still stays with me. You cannot swim while you're drowning. So the first thing that you need to figure out what to do is to just survive this moment that you're experiencing. Don't even think about how you're going to learn and grow, how you're going to come up bigger and better the other side and all that kind of thing. It's just focus on getting through the moment. I've been unfortunate enough to be divorced twice. I'm remarried now. I'm on my third marriage, and I know we can touch on even the shame that brings of being divorced a number of times and married a number of times. So for me, my first and second experiences of divorce were very different. My first experience of divorce, I married my childhood sweetheart. We had met at school. I had fallen in love with him at first sight, literally seeing him at school. It was the 80s. To me, he looked like a mixture of Mel Gibson and Tom Cruise all rolled into one. I thought he was amazing. And we were together for 17 years. Hindsight is an amazing thing. I now look back and I realize, oh my goodness, we should never have stayed together. And I think sometimes being able to accept in yourself, and don't beat yourself up, you won't be able to do this now, but accept in yourself the responsibility that you also carry for mistakes that happened in the relationship is a really powerful one. So for a long time during and after that breakup, I felt that I was very much the victim of being in love with someone who didn't love me as much as I loved them. Whilst that was true, I also now see I have to take responsibility for not just thinking that if you love someone enough, they are going to change their ways and they're going to change their mind and they're going to love you as much as you love them. I think we're fed this narrative that, a man has to be kind of broody and a bit mysterious and also a little bit moody. And if you're lovely, then eventually they will come round and you'll live happily ever after and it'll all be okay. And, look at the Beauty and the Beast narrative. Someone pointed that out to me just the other day, and it was like the scales fell from my eyes. And I just saw, my gosh, how we constantly fed this narrative that actually that's how you eventually get the happily ever after that you want.
Actually, I've never thought about it.
Oh my gosh, literally re-listen to or look at the Beauty and the Beast narrative. He kidnaps her father, then he keeps her captive. He's been turned into a beast because actually he was mean to someone who cast a spell on him. And then, get this, kids, the only way to break the spell is to make a really lovely young woman fall in love with you while you're being absolutely horrible. What are we teaching our girls? It's just terrible.
Wow.
It's just terrible. But so for me, going back to my first relationship, I see now that actually we were never meant to be. And I'm really happy for him now that he has found happiness. He's been really happily married to someone else for a number of years. And I think that was where he was meant to be. But for a long time, I just thought if you loved someone hard enough, it will eventually come good. And actually all that was doing was holding on to something that really should never have been held on to. And my grip was tight. I let him off with all kinds of behavior because I just thought, oh, well, eventually it will all come good.
And that will resonate with so many people listening. I think a lot, I definitely did that. And I think maybe that is, now you said that about Beauty and the Beast, maybe that is because as women, when we meet people, even when they show us who they are, we think, I can change them. When they get to know me, it'll be different. Or if I just hang around long enough, maybe they'll come to realise. They don't realise yet. But like you say, that's not actually the reality.
And I think also, so women of our generation, maybe slightly younger, we didn't always have access to the kind of information that we have now. So I had never heard when I'm 17, 18, of gaslighting or of love bombing and all the terms that, you know, my teenagers and young adults in our house now, they're so familiar with, and red flags and all this kind of thing. We were fed a diet of Mills and Boons and Hallmark movies. And then if you asked your mum, you know, she would say, well, you know, love is hard, you got to stick at it and all that kind of thing, which was, in my mum's case, absolutely was, you know, all worked out great for her. My mum and dad have been married since they were in their 20s and together since they were teens, and they found their way. But just because that's their way doesn't mean it works for everyone. So going back to the first divorce, I was devastated, even though it was me that instigated it. And I think this is a really pertinent point. People think if you are the one that instigates the end of a relationship, that somehow you kind of breeze through and it's all okay. I had an affair that ended my relationship. Now, the reasons that I had an affair, to me, made total sense at the time. I'd only been with one person in my whole life. It was a very damaged relationship, and I needed to know if what I had was as damaged as I thought it was, or whether I was just misguided. And I realized very quickly, oh my gosh, no, this is totally wrong. And I was extremely weak, very naive, and that was how I kind of built a bridge out of it. Yeah. I wouldn't recommend it, and I am ashamed that that is what I did, but I understand why I did it. Yeah. So I've forgiven myself for it. And, you know, if I'd known then what I know now, would I have done it? No, of course not. But I didn't. So that was what I did.
Yeah, I have actually learnt that through working with so many people that, having an affair, I considered having an affair when I was married because I was so unhappy. I just wasn't lucky enough to find anyone to have an affair with, maybe. But and it all happened so fast, mine, before I could even really process it. But I knew things were wrong and I didn't feel loved. And that's what I've seen as a common denominator with people that cheat. And I know there's a theme, and I was actually interviewed about it on television a couple of months ago, about, is cheating always wrong? And yes, it's not right. And yes, there's other ways to do it, maybe in a kinder way to your partner. But I don't think there should be any judgment around that, because quite often we're doing it because our number one need is love and connection. And if we're not getting that from our partner, it's natural that we're going to seek that out elsewhere. So it's really, I think there's a really interesting dynamic on that, because I don't think people should judge. I think we will automatically feel guilty if we have empathy, and but again, there's a reason why we do these things.
I agree, and I also think there's nuance involved, and I think if someone is serially mistreating you by seeking whatever it is they're choosing to seek elsewhere, that's a very different thing from looking for love, kindness, support once elsewhere during a really difficult time. And there are some couples that actually navigate their way back from that, because they realize maybe there was an unspoken ugly truth that they weren't facing, and now it's all blown up, and this has really given them an opportunity to be brutally honest about how they were feeling. And so sometimes, gosh, you can navigate your way back to something even more powerful and beautiful. So no, it doesn't have to be the end. But for me, like I say, it was a bridge. So when that divorce happened, it happened in the full glare of the public eye. It's the control of that situation was very much taken out of my hands. Somebody who I know actually went to the papers, and it came out before I had even really got my head around what was even happening. And we were talking like a matter of weeks. It wasn't like something that went on for a really long time. And so it exploded. And so I fell on my sword, took full blame and responsibility for absolutely everything. I didn't justify, I just took all the blame, because I felt that was warranted, because I was the one who did the thing, so that was what I did. Again, many, many, many years later, I feel sorry for the me back then, because actually I didn't have to take all the blame for that. And if I'd known then what I know now, it would have been a very different thing. But that's what it was.
And also, you had a child. So.
I did. I had a very young child, and the vitriol that I got, I was spat at in the street.
No.
I was. I had neighbours really give me side eye. One woman said to me, "Not so clever now, are we?"
Ooh.
And that really stung, because she didn't know what was going on behind closed doors.
And that's the thing. Nobody ever really knows what's going on behind closed doors. We can't comment. You don't know. And wow, for you living with that in the public eye, I mean, it's bad enough for the rest of us who aren't living in the public eye. I mean, divorce is the second most traumatic life experience we go through. But then to have that played out and not necessarily the whole truth, how did that impact you?
Terribly. I became agoraphobic. I would only leave the house to go to work and to take my son to either nursery or the park. And because click and deliver hadn't been invented yet, and to go to the supermarket, that was literally it. I couldn't eat. I had this horrible voice in my head that it was like a little voice sitting on my ear, on my shoulder, just whispering in my ear. Anytime I was eating something that I made dinner or what have you, and I'd be enjoying it, this little voice in my ear would whisper, "You don't deserve that. You don't deserve this." And because it was a nice meal, and it would get to the point where I was so stressed, I would chew and chew and chew and chew, and I had no saliva in my mouth, so the food wouldn't digest and it wouldn't go down, and I'd have to spit it out. It would get to the point where if I'd go to the cinema on my own because I became very ostracized. I lost a lot of friends during this time. So I'd go to the cinema on my own because it was in the dark and I didn't feel as self-conscious then. And also I enjoy going to the cinema on my own, so it's fine. And I'd get halfway through a film and that little voice would whisper, "You don't deserve to be enjoying this." And I couldn't see the rest of the film. I'd just sit there feeling frozen, thinking, I need to leave, but that would draw attention to me, so I can't walk out the cinema. It was a terrible time. And again, it was when was it? It was the very early 2000s. So we didn't have access to the kind of support that we have now, or even the knowledge that we have now. So it took me a very long time to kind of rebuild from that. And during that time, my life kind of tipped over into a whole other direction where I ended up getting pregnant. And so I put all my energies in, right, I'm going to make this relationship work and I'm going to rebuild something out of nothing. So I kind of went from one very stressful situation into another very stressful situation with the mindset of, this is my responsibility, so I'm going to make this work. I'm going to make it work for my family. I'm going to make it work for my children. I'm going to do the very best that I can with this situation that I take full responsibility for, and I am now in. So that was the next kind of 8 years of my life. I chose to get married during that time to make it right. When I realized really that I couldn't keep going, and again, that's for a number of very personal reasons that I don't talk about publicly, to get divorced again was horrific, but it was very different to the first time, because by now I was on Loose Women, so my profile was even higher than it had been the first time. And also there is something extremely careless about getting divorced twice. People can kind of understand almost your first run didn't work. We are almost of that mindset now. I'm not saying that it's a good thing, but we're almost of that mindset now. But to get divorced twice is almost careless. Again, people didn't know my full situation, and so they can make whatever judgments they want to based on whatever limited information they have. But the difference with getting divorced while being on Loose Women compared to being on a TV show where I was a so-called normal presenter, where you turn up for work and you do your job, but you don't have to talk about yourself, which is much more like a normal job, if you like, was very different, because I had to make an announcement and I had to tell the world while I was obviously on the show. The challenging part for that was there was so much going on behind the scenes that people were not aware of, that they are still not aware of. But making the announcement was horrible, because anyone who's experiencing divorce right now or a separation right now, very often the moment where you go into work is almost your respite, because you don't have to talk about it. Yeah. You don't have to deal with what you're dealing with at home and behind closed doors. So you can almost put that little bit of your brain into a box for a while and almost be normal. Whereas having to make the announcement on television meant the worlds collided. So it did make it quite different, because it meant that rather than being in a so-called normal situation, if you're in a meeting or you're doing whatever and you can give your answer, your response, people knew what my backstory was, if you like, and what I was going through. So the follow-up would always be about that. Yeah. So it was like constantly poking yourself in a wound. It was very difficult to recover from that because you never really had any time off. But on the flip side, once the vitriol died down, and yet again I did receive a lot of that. I got a lot of trolling. The newspapers made of it what they will. But by this time, I suppose I was tougher. So I thought, I'm okay. My kids are okay. My family's okay. That's all I care about. So I kind of made a cocoon around myself. And this time, rather than becoming agoraphobic, as in being too scared to leave the house, which I had previously, I just chose not to. So I barely went out. Yet again, and rather than work and making sure the kids were okay, this is a very unique way to handle going through a divorce, but I decided to go to agricultural college. And I started a landscape design course. So one day a week, on top of doing Loose Women and my other work, I went to agricultural college and I joined a bunch of teenagers, and I decided I love gardening and I'm going to focus all my energy on learning a new skill, and that's going to distract me. And that was what I did. And I got some very strange looks in the canteen. Aren't you that lady off the telly? Yeah, on that first day. But I did, and I loved it. And it actually gave me something else to focus on that was really positive. And there's something so cathartic about working in a garden and planting and even laying slabs and all that kind of thing that really helps your soul. And it was at home. I was in my private space. So it sounds extreme, but that was what got me through my second divorce.
If you are struggling with a breakup, divorce, or domestic abuse, then you're not alone. Do reach out. You can try our online support groups for free for a week to get some support from my accredited coaches, and also find your tribe, or come and get some one-to-one coaching with one of my coaches too. So you can find more information about that on my website, saradavison.com. And I think that is the shifting your focus onto something that you love, that you're passionate about, that gives you that space just to be you.
And it's totally different.
Yeah.
You know, no one cared at agricultural college about what was going on at home.
Yeah.
It was, did I understand angles and drainage and, you know, all this kind of thing. So actually it was a real relief. And then when eventually I had moved house and I got my garden sort of redone to a design I'd started, and, you know, I have to give credit to the garden design company who came in, because clearly they were much more qualified than me. The joy that I got of just standing in my garden in my bare feet. And it's not even a big garden. And just watering plants and having that stillness and time. And I was watching something grow. And rather than feeling that everything had died, actually I was helping something grow.
Yeah.
And it was really powerful to me. I was focusing my attention on something that was being nurtured and coming to life when this other part of me had died, even though it was the right thing. And I really understand it's a very different situation when you voluntarily leave a relationship that is damaging, that is abusive, and you have done the right thing to walk away, and you are now safe, and you've built this cocoon of protection around yourself and your family, is very different to other scenarios of divorce. So I can't talk about what those are like because I haven't experienced them. Yeah. I've only experienced my unique situation.
I think your advice and your example is really informative for everyone, because I do think finding something that gives you that escapism, and especially with the new beginnings and, like, you know, growing new things. I love that. My escapism was scuba diving, because there was so much noise in my world when I was going through it, with the lawyers and the emails and the phone. Every time my phone went, it would trigger me. Every time my email box, a new email came in, it would trigger me. And I know a lot of people listening will be going through that. That's one of the worst parts if you're in a really bitter court battle. And what I found was obviously, and I didn't really realize it until one day I was down there and I was diving, and there's no emails, there's no phone. And I think that's part of why I loved it so much, because no one could contact me. I was in my own space and I could really just focus on the beauty that was around me and the fish and the corals and the water. And just, for me, that's total escapism, because you're so cut off and nobody can contact you, you know. And that's what I loved. That's what I absolutely loved. So yeah, I think it's finding your own little way of escaping.
Absolutely, your version of that. I mean, I love the theory of what you've just said, because I've been scuba diving, and I understand what you mean about the total silence, and it's just you can literally only hear your breath going in and out. But I have to put a huge asterisk here. The only time I've ever been scuba diving, all I wanted was wing mirrors, because I kept imagining a massive shark with its mouth open behind me that I couldn't see. I couldn't relax at all. I found it one of the most stressful things I've ever done. I'm the only person who went scuba diving constantly looking over her shoulder, because I found the whole thing terrifying. But I'm glad it worked for you. But there's no sharks in a back garden.
So no, it's very true. Actually, I did have a very close encounter with a shark, where I was Turks and Caicos, and I'd gone down, and I didn't have a buddy because I was with my mum and dad. They don't dive, and my son was too young at the time. Now he's a great diver, but at that point he was too young. So I'd gone on a sort of a group dive on a boat with people I didn't know, and my buddy, unfortunately, had gone the wrong way when we got down. There is a wrong way, because there were two groups, and he went with one group, and it wasn't our instructor, so I had to stay on my own. And I was near the back, and we were sort of going in a line along this coral. And there were two people behind me. One was a dad, and then his 17-year-old son. And as we were going along, everyone was looking one way towards the coral, and the rest was just water as far as you could see. And the next thing I knew, I felt, gosh, that kid must be overtaking, because there's certain, guidelines that you adhere to, and you don't really overtake if you're on a dive like that. And I thought, he must be overtaking me. And I looked, it was an 11-foot bull shark, who are the ones that will come in for a little nibble, even if they're not really hungry. And I was like, oh my, it was literally a touching distance from me. And so, but it was so beautiful. And in the moment,
Did it go past you, or was it coming towards you?
It was just coming alongside me and just overtook and went all the way down the line. So you could see everyone sort of freaking out as they went. And luckily, he was just sort of nosing and then just disappeared, and that was it. But
No. You see, I would be the one shooting upwards, getting bubbles to the brain, walking on water, never to be seen again.
Yes, well, the 17-year-old did have a little bit of a panic attack at that point, but we weren't as deep as, so he was okay. But yeah, that was a moment. It was a moment.
Wow.
But yeah, I think that's almost part of the, I don't know, for me, it's that sense of adventure, but yeah, it's not for everyone.
See, I'd rather go parachuting.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I've never done that, you see,
because
that.
no sharks in the sky.
No, but there's the fear of death, right?
Yeah. But you see, isn't this interesting? Because I've done 3 parachute jumps. I know we're slightly going off tangent, but it's kind of tied to the same thing, as in, and they've all been tandem. So I've not trained in it or anything,
right?
But I'm perfectly happy to attach myself to someone who's really good at it and let them do the hard work. So yeah, I've done it 3 times. And the first time I was backpacking. I was in New Zealand. We ended up at this place and did it on a whim. I thought it was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. And the next 2 times I've done it in this country. The last time I did it, my son was little, and it was the first time that I thought, ooh, what if something happens to me? I'm a parent now.
Yes.
Whereas it hadn't occurred to me before because I was young and stupid. But what I loved about it, and I would do it again. I have total trust in the person who is attached to me, because they don't want anything to go wrong.
No.
I hope. and if they do, that's just bad luck. And the last one I did, actually, he said to me, have you ever done this before? And there's no training or anything. You just kind of pitch up and they sort of show you the ropes, especially if you've done it before, then it's okay. And I said, yeah, I've done it before. And he went, oh, okay. Have have you ever done it backwards? Do you fancy that? I was like, yeah, that sounds amazing. What does that mean? And he said, just let me do what I'm going to do and it will all make sense. So I was like, brilliant. So we got to the, you climb to a certain altitude and everyone else kind of goes out, and you do it in a group. And as you get to the edge of the door is open, the wind is whooshing around inside the aircraft, and you're sat on the floor in the kind of formation of, back in the 80s or 90s doing the Rock the Boat disco song where you're all sitting on the floor in between each other's legs. It's a bit like that. And then you kind of shuffle forward in twos when it's your turn. And you're sat in front of the instructor, they're behind you, and you just have to tilt your head back and rest on their shoulder, I guess, so that it doesn't flip back and you don't headbutt them. And then they say 1, 2, 3 kind of thing. And then they tip forward and you fall out of the plane. And we did that, sort of 1, 2, 3. You fall forward out of the plane. And then suddenly he wrenched me, flipped me around in midair, and you're falling backwards.
Wow.
So all you can see is the plane going further and further and further away from you. And then he flipped you back round again. And next thing you're going forwards, and then you're free falling, and then the parachute came out. Oh my God, as soon as I got down to the ground, I wanted to get back up and do it again.
Really?
But it was exactly what you said about scuba diving. Clearly you don't have your mobile phone. No one can reach you. You're doing something so exhilarating, terrifying, and possibly death-defying. And in that moment, you feel so scared and so alive.
Yeah.
You forget about everything else. And also, I didn't have to worry about logistics like making the parachute work and all that. Somebody else
did. And also, I think it builds that resilience in you as well, doesn't it? If you think, if I can do that, I can do anything, and I can certainly get through this divorce. And the divorce is a bit like that. Sometimes you feel like you're flat on your back going, I don't know what's going on. The next minute you'll flit around going, I've got to focus on these things, and you're free falling. I mean, it's a bit of a metaphor for the roller coaster.
Sure is, yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
I love it. You mentioned earlier about losing friends, and I think this is something that I get asked a lot about, because people think these friends are always going to be there for me. They support me, they care about me. And I know, I mean, it happened to me, but sometimes the betrayal, it can almost feel worse when it's one of your closest friends that doesn't stick by you, or people decide to move away. How did you deal with that?
I understood it. It did hurt, especially friends that I'd confided in, and they knew the whole truth, and yet they still decided because it was easier to just back off. That did really hurt, but I understood it. I suppose I've always been quite rational, that even if people behave in a way that seems sort of irrational in terms of, yes, you would think someone knows the full truth and the whole truth and they're going to stand by you. If it's not in their interest to do so because it makes their life complicated, either the husband is friend with your ex-husband, or you've been painted in a bad light and they don't want to be tainted by that because it'll make their life complicated. I understand that, even though it hurts. So I had to just say goodbye internally to people that I thought were going to be my friends for a long, long time. Yeah. However, there is nothing like the clearing that happens when you go through a painful breakup. And the friends that I still have now, they are keepers. Yeah. And what you do find is actually the ones that stay are the ones that surprise you. It's never who you think it's going to be.
Absolutely.
You know, there may be people that you just thought you were an acquaintance and you kind of got on all right. And they're the ones that text you going, I'm just checking in. Are you okay? Yeah. No pressure, but if you ever want a coffee, I'm here for you. You don't even have to talk about it if you don't want to. Or, do you know what? I've got a spare seat to the theatre. Do you fancy coming?
I love those friends. I think that really gives you a bit of a boost. And I don't think people realise how much of an impact that can really have, a positive impact on you. So if anyone does know anyone going through a divorce, do things like that, because it does, even if it's a text, like you say, but inviting them to something, even if it's a coffee or even a dog walk, you know, it can actually...
And we don't have to talk about it.
Yeah.
For me, the worst loss, I suppose, was the school gates. And because I went through that twice. And it was 2 different schools because obviously my children were at different ages. That was really hard because suddenly... Rather than, you know, it's awkward anyway when you go to the school gate, especially when you're well known, because people they'll make assumptions about you, and they'll either instantly decide that, oh, look at her, she thinks she's so great, and they haven't even spoken to me, so they don't know. I don't think I'm anything. I'm just, I'm just me. So they'll either give you the side eye and not talk to you because they've already made an assumption, or they're being super friendly, but it's not genuinely friendly because they just want to be friends with a famous person. Yeah. So you're already trying to filter out whether someone is genuinely a good egg or what the score is. When you've been through all of that and you think, okay, no, I found a little group that I'm comfortable with and they seem to like me for me. Yeah. Then you go through a divorce and suddenly you're standing at the school gates and you're back again with people giving you the side eye. Because for me, it's all in the media. It's all across Google and all the newspapers and all of that. And you're back to people giving you the side eye. And then people that you thought were kind of allies at the gate suddenly aren't there anymore. When it happened to me the second time around, I just accepted it because I was too tired to fight. So I just thought, this is where I am right now. I build my cocoon and this is where I'm going to be.
Yeah.
And so I just took it on the chin. I didn't try and explain. I didn't do anything. I realized afterwards that wasn't necessarily the right move because I found out that my ex was merrily going around spreading all kinds of untruths about me at the school gate, which explained the side eye. I didn't know this until well afterwards that I found out that, oh my, apparently I was this, I was that, I was the other.
That's hard.
Do you know where I found out? I found out from the nail salon.
Because everyone goes in and talks
Everyone
about
goes to the nail salon and they gossip away merrily about you or anyone in front of the people in the nail salon. And it was the lady in the nail salon who actually became a friend. And she said one day when there was no one else there, she said, I feel like I need to tell you what people are saying about you behind your back. I found out all sorts. And so anyone who goes to the nail salon and you know who you are, all the stuff you heard about me from my ex-husband, it's a load of old nonsense. It's not true.
Let's put that record
Let's
straight.
Just put that record straight. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I find it fascinating how people, can make those judgments without knowing people. But I guess we've all done it at some point.
Of course we have.
I found that probably one of the hardest points. I kind of seen it coming, and you talked about hindsight earlier. I kind of seen some of it coming maybe, or there were definitely the red flags, but it's hard to see it in that moment. Do you think with your second marriage that you were repeating similar mistakes from the first one?
Yes, 100%, because I hadn't learnt my lessons yet. And I think that the universe sometimes gives you another painful experience because it's very gently or sometimes quite roughly saying to you, you clearly weren't listening first time around, so I'm going to do this to you again. 100%. I made the same mistakes second time round and then some. In that I thought that loving someone enough was enough. I also thought that, I totally disregarded the whole thing. If someone shows you who they are, believe them. And I thought, but they've not been loved by me. They've not, had an experience like me. I'll show them how, maybe they're behaving this way because they've not felt secure or they've not felt all of the things. I did. They were slightly different mistakes, but how I came at them came from the same place in me. Yeah. And I do have to say that side of me hasn't necessarily gone. I still am incredibly loving and giving and forgiving and supporting in my relationship now. That's still there. And that's a really beautiful part of the relationship that I'm in now. And yes, of course, I understand that we all come to our partnerships bringing with us a set of luggage that we've built up from all our other relationships. You don't just live, learn, and leave behind. No. Of course not. You bring part of that with you. But the difference is that now those, really lovely assets that I bring with me, they're accepted in the way that they should be. Yeah. Whereas before they weren't.
I think that's really important advice as well to take away from that, is that don't need to change the good things. If you are loving and forgiving and empathetic, that may have got you hurt because you picked the wrong partner last time. You may have taken advantage of that, and that's definitely my story. But we don't want to lose that, become hardened or not trusting or mean, or, you see it if you watch these reality TV shows. You see people that have been hurt in the past constantly judging their new partner by the last, and I think that means that you could miss out on opportunities. So I definitely think that's really good advice. With your marriage with Nick, who's a lovely, I mean, I absolutely adore Nick, he's amazing, and I can see why you guys work so well together as well, and you have a real chemistry that is really palpable when you're around the two of you, which is really lovely to see you happy together. How do you work with blended families? Because you've both got kids, you've come in, obviously different experiences in divorce. How have you managed then to navigate that to get to a point? Because it's got to come with challenges.
Oh gosh, yeah. And the challenges don't go away. I think, again, looking back to kind of the Disney and Hallmark and all the things that, you introduce to two sets of family units with different dynamics, and everybody, you come with your luggage, they come with their luggage. The room is already very full of luggage, that it's, and you just work it out, and all you do is love each other and go to a theme park and it will all be fine. Of course not. No.
Yeah.
And we made huge mistakes in the beginning by thinking that actually a lot of positive thinking and support and that kind of thing is enough. And it's a big part of it, but it is not enough. Because the challenges are, obviously, yes, you are bringing together two dynamics, but also the children are the ones I feel most sorry for, because they have a leg in each camp and they have two ears, and in one ear is the words and attitudes and actions from one camp, and in one ear is the words and attitudes and actions from the other. And their poor little brain is trying to make sense of, I love both parents, but both of them are telling me conflicting things. And in some instances, and hand on heart, this is not the case from my camp, and from Nick's side as well. There's no criticizing and slagging off or whatever of the other parent, but just even your differences in parenting may be enough to be triggering a response on the other side. And in the middle are these poor kids that are just trying to make sense of it all, and they just want a happy life, and they just want it all to, why can't it all go back to how it was? And I understand that. And I think that for us, the mistake we made was trying to make our home this happy, wonderful place that actually everybody's going to get on. It's all going to be great. And we realized that's not always going to be the case, because there's going to be bumps and challenges. And there are going to be some kids who don't feel seen because another one is getting all the attention. And then there's going to think that there's favoritism because how come they get told off for that and I don't get told off for that, and vice versa, and all the things. And we realized, what this is a totally fluid situation, that every single time is going to be different, because you don't know what they're coming into your home with, and you're going to need to almost do a little emotional recce and find that out, and then see where you are, and then work with what you're given. And our kids now, so we've been together for 10 years, so our kids now are young adults, and even now, of course, there are challenges and this kind of thing, and that different attitudes to parental responsibilities, or what they think that they should be allowed to do, and all that kind of thing. That's my only bit of advice, is to see it for what it is, accept it as a fluid situation, love everybody as much as you can and as you are capable of, but also I think make allowances for, you will not love your stepchild in the same way that you love your own child. It's a different kind of love. And your partner may not necessarily love your child in the way that you love yours. And that's all okay. As long as you two can come together in agreement on whether it is having a word with someone whose behavior is not cool, or championing each other in a beautiful way. Like, for example, my stepdaughter is going to be finishing university soon, and she can only invite 2 people, so she's bringing her parents.
Right.
So that's not me. I am totally fine with that. The fact that she's going to go with her mum and dad, even though they've not been together for a really long time, she wants them to share this incredible moment with her. I have no issue with that. I applaud it. I think it's amazing. And I love the fact that actually they have a good enough relationship that they can sit together and celebrate their child is going to be graduating. I will have my moment home later and I'll raise a glass with her at some other time.
Yeah.
And I think you need to be giving enough and not think, well, I deserve to be there too, because whatever.
I think that comes down to being secure, I think, as well, and having that understanding. I love that, and I think it's really needed. And I think we have to step back and look at the bigger picture quite often instead of getting involved in the little details of all of that. You mentioned a bit about working through things, and I think it's really important, especially with what you've been through, to be able to manage yourself in the workplace, because sometimes emotions, you can't just leave them at the door. I know a lot of people expect you to leave them at the door when you go to work, but it's not always easy. And I know you've branched into using all your skills and talents and experience as a media coach. And I know I invited you in, which was incredible, to come and train all my coaches in my coaching school on media skills, presentation skills. If people are listening to this and thinking, I have to go to work and I have to do presentations and I'm falling apart a little bit, can you give us just your top tip on how they can navigate that? Because I think your media coaching is incredible and everyone should definitely check it out. But give us a taster.
Oh, well, first of all, thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm really, really glad that your community are enjoying it.
Oh, they love it.
Great.
Absolutely love it.
Makes me feel really good. What I would say is, yes, I have branched out into doing media coaching because it kind of brings together, it's almost full circle, that day of auditioning to be a weather presenter and actually having these different skill sets and learning how to utilize them and bring them all together. What I realized is my life experiences mixed together with my work experiences come together so well in showing people how to present themselves in the best possible way at work. And what I mean by that is, we forget that business is personal because you're bringing your full self to work. Yeah. So often, if you are going through a really challenging time, the same tips and hacks that I would give to someone through media coaching is exactly the same thing that will work for you if you're going through a challenging time and you need to present your best self at work. The one thing I would try and do is compartmentalize. So if you are able to just think, right, as I'm walking through the door, deep breath, I'm going to put everything that is happening to me at work in this box and I'm leaving it at the door and I'll pick it up on the way out and I will deal with home stuff when I'm on my way home. Sometimes it's like putting down a really heavy bag and you're leaving that there, and now I have room in my brain to cope with whatever it is that I'm going to have to face today at work. So that's the sort of the first thing. How that works in media training, if you're about to give a presentation at work or give a speech on stage, and you've got all this stuff going on at work, you can't bring that with you on stage because you need to be fully present and engaged and being able to read the room and the nuances of
and
what
I'm crying.
And not crying. Yeah. Not crying is a big bonus. It's a really big bonus. But also it's an escape. It's almost like a work version of the scuba diving and the falling out of an airplane, because during this time you only have to focus on the one thing. So really try, if you can, to bring that focus with you. Even the kind of decompression techniques, and it is so funny because I've never thought of that with scuba diving, but yeah, the decompression techniques that I give people in the training, it works really well with calming you down when you're going through a tough time. That is utilizing your breath. The power of the breath is not to be underestimated. So I show people how to box breathe, and using box breathing is something that Navy SEALs use it, the SAS use it. It's used by people who are highly skilled at going into very stressful situations and leaving their personal life behind them. So use it. And basically box breath is you breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, and hold for 4. Clearly, I'm saying that in a very rushed way, and you do it a lot more slowly. But why that's so powerful is because you never leave your breath at home. You'll never leave it in the car. You'll never forget it somewhere. And you'll think, oh my gosh, I wish I brought my box breath with me. You will always have it with you. So even if you need to take a moment and nip to the ladies' loos, the ladies' loos are your biggest asset when you are going through a challenging time at home and you need to make things work for you at work. Nip to the loo. Use box breathing, then also use what I call the Taylor Swift method, which is the shake it off. Shake it off. If you can go into the disabled loo, which is a little bit bigger, and literally you shake your hands, first of all, shake your hands, rotate your head, move your shoulders, literally jump around and shake all that tension out of your body. Because when you are storing all that tension inside of your body because of the pressure and the pain that you're going through at home, it is sitting in you, and it's really challenging to push through at work. And then the final one I call is say ah. So say ah is like what you do when you go to the dentist and then some. And this is why, like I say, the ladies' loo is the most powerful tool, because you don't necessarily want to do this in public. And it's literally opening your mouth as wide as you possibly can, and keep doing it. Just open your mouth like I'm doing it now, like really, really wide, and you look crazy, but it really works, and your jaw will click. And what that does is it releases tension in your jaw. And it releases the tension in your face, because when you are trying to literally put your best face forward at work, when you're going through a challenging time, but your jaw is clenched, your teeth is clenched because of the hurt and the pain that you're trying to hold in inside, your body is clenched because of the hurt and the pain, and your breathing is so shallow, you're literally trying to drive forward with the brakes on. You can't do it. So this is how I find that, yes, obviously the media coaching that I do is so much more than this and goes into much more depth. But in terms of just 3 top tips that I can leave your listeners with that will help them remove the personal pain so that you can push forward at work, it's those.
I love that. Say one. I'm going to definitely try that. Okay, so I have one last question for you that I ask all my guests on the show. So the podcast is called Heartbreak to Happiness. So what is happiness for you, Andrea?
Oh, that's such a lovely question. What is happiness for me? Happiness for me is stillness. Because there is a still place inside all of us, sometimes amongst all the noise of the world, that when you can come back to that place where you're taking a moment and you're taking it all in, and then you feel it, and it's almost like, again, I go back to that little voice that says, you don't deserve this. That little voice is whispering, I feel happy. Oh. And sometimes that can be amidst the noise and the clatter of your whole family being in the kitchen, and everyone is talking and the radio is on and someone is on the phone and and it's noise, and you kind of step back and think, everyone's in a good place. I'm happy. Sometimes it can be gardening. Sometimes it can be walking your dog. Sometimes it can be doing yoga. Sometimes it can be walking down the street. And I don't know if anyone else does this, but sometimes I put some music on and I pretend I'm walking in my own movie to my own little soundtrack, because I'm a bit mad. And I walk along and it's like, yeah, I'm cruising. I'm doing this. And you have that little moment in your head where you feel, I'm happy. It comes from that still place. That's what happiness is to me.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, you're fantastic. Where can people find out more about you and get in touch about the media coaching and all the other things that you're doing?
Well, I hang out on Instagram, and I'm Andrea McLean 1 on Instagram. But if you want to find out more about my media coaching, it's themediacoach.academy, and you'll see everything that I have to offer there.
And I highly recommend it, because my coaches absolutely loved it, and I learned so much as well. So thank you, Andrea, for everything that you do. I mean, you really are beautiful inside and out. You really are helping so many people as well. And I really appreciate you being so brave, talking about everything so honestly. So thank you for being such a fabulous guest.
Anything for you.
Oh, thank you. Today's episode is sponsored by the leading family law department of Pennington Manchers Cooper, a full-service international law firm with its main base in London. The department provides expertise in all areas of family law and specialises in high-value financial and complex children cases. The lawyers there believe in offering an outstanding level of service and support to their clients, many of whom have international connections. To contact the team, please email Anna Walwood at penningtonslaw.com and quote Sara Davison. Don't forget to subscribe, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.
That's it for today's episode of Heartbreak to Happiness. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to win a free ticket to one of Sara's virtual retreats. The retreats are a transformative combination of live webinars with Sara herself, coupled with empowering online video programs designed to help you cope better with your breakup and start feeling happy again. For more details, head on over to heartbreaktohappinesspodcast.com, where you can also get a copy of Sara's free gift. Thank you, and join us again on the next episode for another dose of Heartbreak to Happiness.